All right, guys, so I have a very special edition of the show for you today, guys, as I am interviewing a congressional candidate for United States Congress, Mr. Mario Fratto, who is my friend. He is somebody that I met when I first started doing YouTube videos back during the fall of 2020. We were both, kind of grinding, doing videos and whatnot. And he reached out to me to collaborate, and we started doing collaborations back in the day around the 2020 presidential season, right? That was so long ago. Well, it seems like it was so long ago, even though it wasn't that long ago. And ever since then, I have kept up with the guy. We've met in person. He's become like a brother to me. Okay, so I am honored to interview him and to introduce him to you guys, specifically people who are new to the channel who weren't necessarily following me back then. So this was an interview that I was very excited to do, and this is my second interview with somebody that is running for Congress. Now Mario is running for the House of Representatives in New York District 24 as an America First conservative in the Republican primaries. So with that being said, I am hoping and praying that he wins his race, and that is why I'm trying to help him out by giving him this interview and platforming him on my channel. So before we get into this interview, I just want to let you guys know, if you want to check out more of Mario and his stance on issues and things like that and donate to him, you can do so at marioforcongress.com. Again, if you want to support Mario, check him out, donate, you can do so at marioforcongress.com. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this interview. All right, guys, so we have an old school guest on Black Conservative Perspective today by the name of Mario Fratto. Now, some of you guys may remember Mario back from late 2020, okay, during the 2020 presidential season. Me and Mario used to do live streams all the time. We was tag teaming it back during the early days of YouTube. Now, Mario has took a break because Mario has decided that he actually wants to run for office. Mario is running for New York's 24th congressional district against incumbent Chris Jacobs in the Republican primary. So with that being said, I want to do this interview with Mario because he's a good friend of mine. I'm supporting him in his campaign, obviously. And I want to reintroduce you guys who weren't watching my channel back in the day to him, because he's just an all-around great guy. And I think that he really has America's best interest at heart. And that is why he is running. Okay. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce Mario to you guys, and we'll go from there. So Mario, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us why you're running for Congress.
Well, first off, Greg, it's great to be back with you, and thanks for that great introduction. You're too kind to me, but I am running because I do think I can help the country. As Greg said, I used to be on YouTube. I started a channel, started getting censored a lot, if some of you guys remember that. And I was really frustrated that I could not get my message out because of the censorship. I sat back and I was arguing with people on Facebook like we do about politics, and really considering what I'm doing with my time. And I think a lot of people got to that point during the pandemic where they had too much time at home. They didn't know what to do. I had put it into that channel, and then the channel kind of started, dwindling away with the losing subscribers, everything else. So New York and the whole country redistricts every 10 years, where they do the census, they find out how many states have gained or lost population, and they reapportion the number of congressional seats. So this year, New York, I think because of 89 people, we fell short of the number. We lost a congressional seat. So because of that, the districts gained population, they got bigger, and they redistricted me where I had been in the 23rd district. Chris Jacobs is currently representing the 27th. Now it's the 24th. This district is 250 miles from end to end. It's, if you drove across the state of Ohio, you'd still have to drive another half hour and you'd be in my district. So it's massive land-wise. Chris Jacobs is a Republican. He's currently the incumbent. I looked at his record and I wasn't too thrilled about it. He voted for the January 6th commission. He was one of only 35 Republicans that did that. He voted to strip Marjorie Taylor Greene from her committee assignments. He was one of only 11 Republicans to do that. He voted for a farm workforce bill that gave amnesty to illegals who are working in agriculture, and they can pay $1,000 fine and get a green card for themselves, their kids. And he also co-sponsored a bill called the Fairness for All Act, which makes transgender people a protected class, just like minorities or religious groups. And what that did is it allows men in women's bathrooms. It allows men on women's sports teams. And that's just too much for me. So in fact, I've been calling him out for the last 2 months. He just dropped his support, and he was a co-sponsor. He dropped his support and is no longer sponsoring that bill after more than a year of being on it. So it's great that he did that. But I think that's the problem in the party now, is that we have RINOs who don't support other Republicans, who vote for things that Republicans don't support. You know, and anytime you're voting with Nancy Pelosi, you're probably on the wrong side of things. So that's the reason I wanted to run. And I think I just bring something different to the table, because his background and mine are totally different. And I can get into that. But if you got some questions for me, more about the race, I gave you a lot there.
Yeah. So your background, I think it's important that viewers understand your background. Now, the title of your YouTube channel is Making the Case with Mario Fratto, which alludes to your background. So if you want to let the viewers know your background a little bit and why, you know, you're qualified to run and whatnot, go ahead and do that for a second.
Yeah. So right now I'm running a small business. My family has a construction business, but for the first 5 years, I practiced law after I got out of school. So I graduated from college. I studied history. I went to law school. I was a practicing attorney for 5 years. I had my own practice, and I got burnout. They call it a recovering lawyer or recovering attorney, is you just can't take anymore. And I got to a point where I thought lawyers were the worst people in the world when I was practicing, until I got into politics. And now I realize politicians are the worst of the worst. So all those lawyer jokes can go out the window now, and I'll only go with the political jokes. So yeah, I practiced for 5 years, couldn't really take it anymore. My family had some personal things going on, and I thought I could help them with this business. It's the third generation in my family. My grandfather started it. We're a granite manufacturing business. We make granite curbing and install it. And for the past 3 years, I've been doing that. So I've been working, you know, whether it's in the office or out in the field doing construction. I operate a forklift. And I think that's how this district is, that it's working people the whole way. It's rural, you know, agricultural. And the person I'm running against grew up with a $25 million trust fund, has 40 million in real estate. And I don't think he can relate to the district. And I feel like, because I understand the law, I understand the Constitution, but I also understand the working class and the majority of the people in this district, that I could better represent them. And I think I'm obviously more conservative than Chris Jacobs, because I'd never support some of the stuff he did. And that's why he's losing support within the party. President Trump endorsed him in 2020. He didn't endorse him now. I'm hoping to get that endorsement because I've been a huge Trump supporter. I started my channel in support of President Trump, and I think he'll be back in 24. And I think he needs allies, because a big problem that he had was that there weren't enough Republicans that had his back. The second January 6th happened, a lot of them turned. I think that was the last video I made on YouTube, was talking about the Republicans that were calling for his removal from office, saying he should never hold office again. And the second they thought his brand was tarnished, they showed their true colors. And I think if he's going to have a shot to get back in 24, he's going to need to have people in the House and in the Senate that are going to have his back. And he knows Chris Jacobs isn't that guy.
So it sounds to me like what you're saying is that Chris Jacobs is against Trump, or he's anti-Trump. He's in the Mitch McConnell wing of the party. Is that what you're saying?
Well, here's the thing. He made it appear that way. And then now he's, if you read any interviews or see him, he's saying how he's a Trump supporter. He supported his policies. And I think it's because it was political expedience. But after January 6th, he was one of the 35 that voted for that January 6th commission. And I think it's pathetic that 35 Republicans would vote for an investigation into January 6th when we could only get 7 Democrats to vote to investigate Benghazi when 4 Americans died at our embassy. So how do we get 35 Republicans on board for this when the only person that was killed was a protester that was killed by the police? And they know that that's basically going to be a hit job on Republicans, that they're only doing this investigation to say it was terrorism or right-wing extremism, and it's tied to President Trump. So to say you're an ally of President Trump now, after you voted to bring that kind of heat on him and the party, is just not believable. So he's saying he supports President Trump, but I don't believe it with that kind of voting record.
Gotcha. So let's talk about you. What are some of the key issues on your platform that you're trying to address in this country right now? I mean, we have an inflation crisis, got a border crisis. We have, a lot of foreign policy stuff going on right now, crime. We have a whole lot of problems in this country. And I've heard you talk about your opponent and how, your opponent isn't necessarily a America First Republican. So I want the audience to understand, why are you a better candidate than him from, the perspective of being America First?
Well, first and foremost, I want to end our dependence on China. I've been running on that. I've been beating that drum for years. On my YouTube channel, I talked about it a lot, that China is enemy number one. I think a lot of the problems we have in our country now can be tied back to China and our dependence on them. Even take a look at the pandemic. The virus comes out of China. Then all of a sudden we need antibiotics, prescription drugs, masks, ventilators, everything we need it from China. And that puts us in a very bad spot. Even now where they're trying to push solar power. Well, those panels are made in China. They're trying to push electric vehicles. Those batteries are made in China. China has the lithium reserves and cobalt and everything they need to make batteries in Africa and other places around the world. So it all comes back to China. And I like to say that we went to war in Korea and Vietnam. We were told that those wars were to stop the spread of communism. Now, this whole time, after all these Americans have died in those wars, we've been building up the most powerful communist country in the world to make them into a superpower. Yet you can't buy a Cuban cigar because you're supporting communism. So it's obvious that they're lying to us about the motivations. The reason that we do so much business with China is for money. It's to help corporations, and it's selling out the American people. Because God forbid China turns their back on us now, we're going to collapse. Our healthcare system would collapse. Our whole country would collapse. So we need to start building those things here that we buy from China. And we need to get ourselves to a point where if China turns their back on us or things go south with our relationship in any way, this country could sustain itself, because right now we can't. And I think that's just a huge predicament to be in, and not enough people are aware of that.
Got it. So it sounds like your main focus right now is China. You think that China right now is a bigger issue to this country and a bigger enemy than Russia. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I think we made a huge mistake with Russia. I think a lot of people can look at this situation, and it's obvious that even under George Bush, Russia was going in and taking parts of the country of Georgia. Okay, then Obama gets in, Russia goes and takes Crimea. Then Trump gets in, Russia doesn't do anything. The second Biden gets in, Russia's going back in again. So I think they sense weakness. And look, it's not good what they're doing. Let's not try to put a happy face on it, but we should be working with Russia to counter China's power in the world. And instead, what we did is push Russia into China's arms and vice versa. And that's the last thing you want, is an alliance between Russia, between China. Now you see Iran, they're saying is firing missiles at our embassy in Iraq. So we're putting these countries together, and you want to talk about an axis of evil. Russia, China, and Iran together is just a nightmare. And I think we had a lot more in common with Russia than we do with China. And we should have been working harder to bring Russia into the fold. And instead, we are so concerned with NATO and keeping Russia at bay from Europe that we've ostracized them. That now we've almost pushed Russia to a situation like this, because they feel like everybody's so concerned with them and how dangerous they are. The Democrats were saying that all the way since 2016 with Hillary, the Russia collusion. They got involved in the election, everything else. So they've made Russia into this big enemy when really, what has Russia done to us in the past 10 years compared to China? And we didn't have a problem with Russia. We haven't had a problem with Russia really since the Cold War, but it's Russia's behavior with other countries that they want to pull us in and make us feel that Russia's the threat. And the biggest threat we got now is what position we're going to take in this Ukraine crisis.
Yeah, so I definitely think there's an argument to be made here that Russia has been made out to be this boogeyman that is really not a boogeyman as much as China's the boogeyman. And with that being said, that kind of puts it at a disadvantage because now we're trying to fight two boogeymen, China and Russia, when, that you can argue is costing us the resources that we need to actually fight China and maybe bringing Russia closer to China, which is kind of what we've seen throughout this whole, Ukraine crisis, is that China's just kind of been like, Russia can kind of do what they want to do. Right. And again, I think that puts us in a precarious situation because now, China is making moves on Taiwan, and who knows, this amount of time before they may pour their own version of what's going on in Ukraine with Taiwan, especially considering how, Russia felt emboldened to do it under Biden. Why not, Xi Jinping, take a page out of Putin's playbook and do the same thing with Taiwan. It seems like nowadays, a lot of these foreign powers, they seem to be trying us. They seem to think that we're not in a position of leadership and strength. So with that being said, I want to talk a little bit about some domestic stuff because you are going to be a representative. And I think for the most part, most of the things you'll be working on will be more domestic policy and stuff like that. What do you think is the biggest issue domestically that the U.S. is currently dealing with?
Well, I think it is the inflation because it's driving up everything. And that's, look, the gas prices and the inflation are tied together, right? Because no matter what, everything's going up because of the money we're printing. And that goes back to the money we're spending. If we didn't need to spend that money, then we wouldn't need to print more and on and on. So it's a vicious cycle. But that's also causing the gas price to go up regardless of any oil shortage and just basic supply and demand, because everything's going up. But then once that fuel goes up, it causes the price of everything to go up because everything is moved by trucks. Our products are moved by trucks. So everybody's in that situation. Everything on the shelf in your grocery store, everything on the shelf in Walmart, everything got there either from a ship that was unloaded with a truck or directly from a factory with a truck. So we need to get those prices down. And the way we do that is to stop printing money. And we can stop printing if we stop the spending. Our government is so bloated and just with so many programs, so many different things that it doesn't need. I mean, look at the Department of Education. That was founded in 1979 under Jimmy Carter. We were fine before that. In fact, I think our parents' generation is a little better than ours in the way of how they think. They weren't as, left wing and radical. They had a little more common sense. They were a little more traditional. And they turned out fine. They didn't need to go to school having a Department of Education in the background at a national level. That should be left to the state and local governments. And that kind of segues in to the next thing, which I think is education here, that the kids are being brainwashed and they're these people, the educators that they call themselves, they're shaping and molding our children. They're spending more time with our children than we do. And they're telling us to stay out. They're saying, just don't get involved, leave the curriculum to us. We'll decide what should be taught to your children. And I think you're seeing people pushing back really hard. You're seeing these viral videos of parents at the parent teacher conferences and school board meetings where they're saying enough is enough. And that's how you start a revolution. That's how you change a country, is with the youth. In one generation, they can have kids that grow up hating this country. And I think they're doing that now. I think they're teaching kids that America is a bad place. They did a lot of bad things. It's not a fair country to live in. And when you raise a generation like that, it's no wonder that you're not seeing the patriotism and the kind of American pride that you used to see before, and now we're having kids that basically grow up and think, hey, we're not the best country in the world. This isn't the best place to grow up. You don't have the most opportunity here. And how can you have a strong country when that's the next generation?
Yeah, I think that's a big issue in this country right now is education. And I think, we've seen Glenn Youngkin in Virginia rally off of that, right? This idea that parents do have say in their child's education and that there is some funny business going on in schools. And Democrats, they always play their game, deny, 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 and tell parents that they're ignorant and they don't know what they're talking about. But that came back to bite them in the butt, right? In
Mm-hmm.
Virginia. So I think we've seen Republicans rally off of that. And with that being said, I want to ask, Republicans are predicted to basically take back the House and maybe even the Senate in the 2022 midterms. And with that being said, Republicans will be able to kind of set the agenda for legislation that Biden should consider. What do you think the Republican strategy should be when they take back the House? Should it be more concerned with stopping Biden's agenda, or should the Republicans push their own agenda for Biden to try to consider?
That's a good question. I think it has to be a combination, but I definitely think at this point it's more important to just slam the brakes on Biden completely, because we see everything they've done is an absolute disaster. So I think preventing that from happening is the most pressing issue. But I also believe that Republicans should push to have legislation be simplified. President Trump alluded to that when he was talking about his tax reform that he wanted. Remember, he said, you're going to have a card like this that you can file your taxes on, and it's going to be all on one little piece of paper. I think we need to push that with legislation, that instead of packing these bills that are thousands of pages where they tell us you need to pass the bill to see what's in it. Is that what I think Pelosi said? That pass the bill first to find out what's in it. And that, unfortunately, that's what happens, that there's so much in there that they slip in more spending or a new program. Republicans need to say, look, this is 1 or 2 pages. This is a law we want to pass. We're not negotiating to put in this or that or any other pork spending. Make people go on record and hold them accountable. So if there's something, let's say, I think the majority of the country agrees on, like trying to fight cancel culture or trying to stop censorship, that big tech has so much power over us with Google and Facebook and Twitter. If we get something that the country agrees on, put that up for a vote on 1 or 2 pages. Make it that everybody in the country can read it and understand it, and then let them see who voted for it and who voted against it. Because instead, what we get is people saying, well, the reason I didn't vote for that is because this was in it. And the reason I didn't vote for this is because that was in it. And that always happens where they say it was this one thing, and you get 2 guys that you think are on the same side of something and they disagree because of one other thing. So we should hold them accountable and say, this is the bill. How do you feel about it? And not let them point to another issue and dodge the actual issue. And I would love to see that. And on that note, those single page bills, I think, should be 10% haircut for spending across the board, right out the gate. My grandfather always says he only has a 3rd grade education, he tells me, but he can teach me about economics. And it's just, don't spend more than you make. In this country, we take in $4 trillion, but then we put out $5 trillion budgets. It's like, that's the most simple, basic math. You can't keep going into debt and think you're going to spend your way out somehow. And that's what they're doing. So I think that we cut that spending. It preserves some value of the dollar, and that's going to help the middle class the most. Because when you devalue the dollar like they're doing, it's easy to survive if you got 10 or 20 million dollars and now it's worth 5 or 10 because inflation cut it in half. But if you have 50,000 or 100,000 saved over your life, or value in your home, or whatever it is, and then it goes in half overnight, that person can't recover. But the rich people, it doesn't matter if it's 50 or 100 million, they're okay. So I think we need to focus on the middle class here.
Yeah, I mean, I would even argue that inflation actually helps the rich because, rich, they own assets, and asset prices are, inflated. So, that was an argument I was making in a video just yesterday. I was talking about how, inflation is really hurting the middle class and the lower middle class the worst, because those are the people that don't really own as much assets, right? When rent inflation happens, guess what? Landlords are getting rich, right? They're getting more paid in rent, along with the values of their homes going up. We have this housing boom, okay, in which houses are getting bought and sold like crazy, and middle class isn't really able to participate in it because you have all these big banks that are participating in it that are buying up these homes instantly, right? And then putting them on the market, for these extravagant rents. Again, it's just crazy across the board. And I think that, for the Democrats campaigning on not raising taxes on anybody making less than $400,000 a year, inflation has actually raised taxes on those people. Okay. And the rich seem to have benefited from it because, again, their asset values are going up. So I mean, unless you're in
Right.
tech is getting screwed. But if you're in traditional assets, then yeah, you're doing pretty well off. So with that being said, I think that we've kind of went over a lot of some of the basic stuff. I think that the audience probably has a good understanding of what you're for and what kind of separates you from your opponent. It seems that your opponent is he seems to be a RINO. He seems to be somebody that's not necessarily as pro-Trump as he seems. He doesn't necessarily seem to be, on one side of the fence. He seems to be kind of fence hopping based off what's politically expedient and what's not. And it seems to me that you're more solid in the direction of being kind of America first. Is that correct?
That's a great way to summarize it, Greg. And that's why, even at the county levels, he's gotten an endorsement by a Republican county, and then I get the conservative party in that same county. So it's a Republican primary. They're trying to see who's more conservative, basically. And I think it's me, and I hate to say it, but when he ran in 2020, his opponent made a website called rhinochris.com, and that site's still up. The site's still up, and it's just based on his state Senate record before he became a congressman. Taxpayer funded abortion, putting a stop on oil and gas, all sorts of stuff that it's just like, man, that's a Republican. And now he's gotten Congress and there's a new record that he's running on. And I just think the people deserve better. If you're in this red of a district, you shouldn't be sending some moderate to Washington. And that's why I'm running, because I think I'm the only conservative in this race and we deserve that kind of representation.
Got it. So just to wrap up the interview here, can you let the audience know, how to find you, how to donate if they want to donate, and just some parting words for the audience so that they remember your campaign and who you are?
Well, this plays a big part behind me here, so I hope people remember this. But marioforcongress.com is my website. You can go there to volunteer, just get more information and donate. We're trying to raise as much money as we can, especially by the end of the month, because it's a filing deadline, and we'll be able to show how much we've raised next month. So that's really important. But please, if you support me, it doesn't matter what it is, donate, volunteer. You can find me on Twitter at Mario Fratto. I have a Facebook page, Mario Fratto for Congress. Go there, like the page. And I'm coming back tonight. Well, this interview probably won't air tonight, but I'm doing my channel again. I'm going to do some live streams on making the case with Mario Fratto. So please, if you guys want to stop the RINOs, you want to see some real people with real experience get into office and make a difference, then I'd ask for you to vote for me if you're in the 24th district up here. And if you're not, just help my campaign at my website.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mario. I appreciate it. It felt like old times, man, just chopping it up.
It did.
The way we did back in the day. And, hopefully, I'll be calling you Congressman Fratto. And we might not be able to chop it up again as a hopefully we can chop it up again when you get in office. You can.
I'll be the first interview, if I get elected, will be on Black Conservative Perspective.
Hey, I like to hear that. I like to hear that. So, all right, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And guys, make sure you check Mario out. Make sure you comment and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.